Hi, I'm Larry Butler. I'm a live performance coach based here in Nashville. I work with singer-songwriters and performers of all kinds from the moment you walk on stage to the moment you walk off. I'm based here sequestered, stay sequestered, in what I like to call the Bell Mead creative space. It's actually a good-sized chunk of my living room that I've converted into a rehearsal space and videotape and do critiquing from here. I've moved this table and my books that we're going to talk about into this space mainly because the lighting is better and visuals are all about lighting. When this whole thing is over, everybody's going to ask you, what did you do while you were sequestered and had all that time to yourself? Did you actually accomplish anything? Wouldn't it be great if you had an answer for that? That's why I'm here tonight, to help you do that. I've been reading and writing. One of my great reads has been a book called The Black Swan. It's by a Lebanese philosopher. I want to get this name right, Nassim Nicholas Taleb. The black swan, as he describes it, are things that come out of nowhere. You can't see them coming. Things happen in the culture or to you that significantly changes your life. And those are the most meaningful things in your life and the things you need to be aware of and look out for and deal with when they arrive. Because he said too often people discount that, like, oh, that's not part of my 5-year plan, or I don't know what that's about. I don't want to look at that. That doesn't seem like anything I was thinking about. He says instead, you need to embrace those things when they come out of the blue. You need to investigate and evaluate. Are they good? Are they bad? But more importantly, how can you take advantage of these things to your benefit? And that's what I've been doing with this whole thing that's going on, because since we're sequestered, what else is there to do but read and write? And I want to recommend some things initially for reading. Let's talk about reading. Let's talk about the things that benefit your career as a songwriter or a singer-songwriter or whatever it is you want to do in the music business. It's in this book, by the way. Start with the Bible of the Industry. All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Don Passman. This is the 9th edition. Don's just come out with the 10th edition. I'm sure you've heard of this book. You have this book. You've read this book. You've leafed through this book. I would suggest that whichever one of those apply to you, you get the 10th edition and you read it cover to cover. There's things in there you didn't know or you knew about and wasn't fully explained to you. Don Passman, 10th edition, get it. It'll keep you busy for a while and you're going to learn something. There are 3 revenue streams in music today. There's live, which is what I do, merchandising, which kind of ties into live, and publishing. Don does a great job in his book of explaining how publishing is designed to work, how it should work, how it could work if everybody behaved themselves. This is how it really works. This is the Plain and Simple Guide to Music Publishing by Randall Wixen, W-I-X-E-N. Randall's an independent publisher based in Los Angeles. He has decades of experience. He's seen it all, and he describes exactly how publishing works behind the scenes. A lot of people don't agree with what Randall has to say, but I think you ought to look into that just to be aware of what could be going on in publishing that you aren't aware of right now. The next 2 books are books I physically don't have because I've lent them out to people and they have not returned them, and now is not the time for me to go knocking on doors to get my books back, so I will try to just describe them to you best I can with my hands. The first is by a German philosopher, pop psychology guy named Eckhart Tolle, T-O-L-L-E. Eckhart has written what is probably the self-help book of this century. It's called The Power of Now. You may have read it. You may have heard of it. It's like 10 or 15 years ago, but it describes the whole idea that your ego runs your life. Your ego is centered right here, and you need it because it reminds you to eat and sleep. But it also wants to run your whole life. It doesn't particularly like the creative side because then you leave the ego side and you get into this side. And so the ego does everything it can to keep you out of creativity. What it likes to do is have you live in the past. All your regrets and all the things you wish you had done or you did, and you just dwell on them and you lie awake at night wishing that hadn't happened. Or the ego wants you to live in the future. What's going to happen? What's that person going to do? There's disaster coming. What's going to become of me? That's the ego talking. And there again, you're lying awake at night. All it's trying to do is keep you out of the now. The now is right now, not 2 weeks from now, not 2 hours from now. Right now is the time you need to create, that you need to get busy. And that is what the ego wants you not to do. In his second book, which is the book I want to recommend, is called A New Earth. It takes all those concepts from the power of now and puts them into practice, puts them into practical ways in which you can adjust to this thing going on in your head in order to open up more space for creativity. And by the way, probably become a way better person. The second book, a complementary sequel of sorts to Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, is a book called The War of Art, which is kind of a play on the art of war. And the author, Stephen Pressfield, who was a screenwriter, I believe his idea was he is at war. He's at war with, frankly, the ego, which he prefers to call the resistance. Stephen's is a successful screenwriter. He's been doing it for decades, and he found that there's something going on in his head that prevents him from getting started, prevents him from getting busy, it prevents him from finishing anything. There's too much going on in his head that says, you're not good enough, this is dumb work, no one likes you, all the negative things that resistance is telling you to keep you from actually doing something. And his book is even more practical. The thing about A New Earth and A War of Art is the fact that you're going to see yourself in every page. And maybe that will get you to read it, or maybe not. Okay, now we're back to actual physical books that I have. Let's move on to your actual career as a songwriter or singer-songwriter. I'll start with singer-songwriter, which I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up my own book in this whole dissertation. This is it. It's the new singer-songwriter rule book, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. I've been spending these 6 weeks, we've been off not only reading like a Black Swan and A New Earth, but also rewriting this book. It's completely rewritten, reformatted, redesigned. It's current, brought up to date. For instance, did you know on March 20th of this year, the Copyright Office upped the fees for copyrighting your music? It's in here. That's how current it is. Of course, I recommend it. Everything in here you need to know about being a singer-songwriter. It might even discourage you from becoming one, but that will be up to you after your read. Next, let's talk about books on songwriting. There are hundreds, aren't there? And it's really weird because songwriting, as you know, is an intangible thing. It's in the air. You don't know where it comes from. It's ephemeral, and it's flighty, and it's creative, and it's inspirational, and it's here today and gone tomorrow, and you don't know where it comes from. You don't know how to get it back. And that's what most about all. In fact, this book as well talks about that. I've read a lot. I haven't read 100, but I've read a lot of songwriting books. Most of them have their own particular slant, which is good. They have gems in them. I've plucked a lot of gems out of all the songwriting books, and I put them into a Twitter feed, which you'll find at my website. Regardless, I've just finished reading what I believe the ultimate book on songwriting and songwriters. It's called Tune Smith. It's by Jimmy Webb. Jimmy Webb wrote all the big Glenn Campbell hits. By the time I get to Phoenix and Wichita Lineman, he wrote Up and Away and MacArthur Park. All the big, major, melodic, thoughtful, orchestral hits of the 70s, 80s, and 90s were all done by Jimmy Webb. He wrote this book in the 90s at the height of his career. It's all about becoming a successful songwriter and what it's like to be a successful songwriter and how you might be one too. But more than that, there's so much in here about lyrics and rhyming and chord progressions and melodies and how they all have to kind of meld together to be into a wonderful song. It's really well done. There's a caveat. This is a serious book. This is a really well-written book for people mainly who really like to read. It's a pleasure. My book, for instance, was written for people who don't particularly like to read. But this is written for people who like to read, and you will enjoy this book, but don't be scared. There's a lot in here, and you will come away with it knowing a lot more than you do now. With the little time I have left, I want to talk about the things that you're going to get daily in email blasts and blogs in the music business. Again, there's hundreds of them. I got 4 or 5 I think you ought to pay attention to. The first, in alphabetical order, is ASCAP Daily Brief, put out by ASCAP, run by a guy named Dean Kay. He is an ASCAP board member, has been forever. He's a respected songwriter and publisher. He has a staff, I assume as a staff, he can't be doing this all by himself, goes out into the internets on a daily basis and finds all these interesting, weird articles about songwriting and about music and the music business and marketing and theory and history and everything about music and songwriting. It's really wonderfully well done. Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, appears in your inbox. All you got to do is go to ascap.com/email and sign up for the ASCAP Daily Brief. This is Nashville after all, and we need to know as much about country music as we can. And there's a lot of emails and blogs about country music as well. One I find that does the whole job, and the only one-stop shopping, is the Billboard Country Update. Put out by Billboard. You do not have to subscribe to Billboard magazine to get it. I'll tell you how in a minute. It's written, compiled, edited, conceived by Tom Rowland, who's a respected author. 40 years of dealing in country music. Tom really knows his stuff, and this whole, it's just weekly, but it reviews everything important that went on this past week, and it talks about what's coming up the next week. It's the one thing you need to do if indeed you're all interested and need to be in country music. You go there by going to the billboard.com, and up on the home page in one of the corners there's a thing that says newsletters. Poke that and fill in your information, and it will arrive in your inbox on a weekly basis. There are also hundreds of blogs about the music business. The longest running, most respected, most followed and subscribed to one is the Lefsetz Letter. It's written by Bob Lefsetz. I've known Bob forever, and he is, from my opinion, the most knowledgeable and most passionate person there is to talk about the music business and the music and the people in it and the artists and the more than that, TV, books and films, and everything is internet centric in our lives. Anything is in the culture, anything going on now, like this whole sequestering thing. Bob knows more about it than you do, and Bob has an opinion about it, and he types it up. You could, it's almost daily, sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes 3 times a day, depending on how much stuff comes in. Bob reads incessantly. He really knows the stuff. And the cool thing about Bob's email blast is that it is an email, and you can actually respond to Bob personally. He reads the responses. You can say, hey, Bob, that was a great piece, or hey, Bob, you're nuts. And he'll read them, and lots of times he'll even reprint them in his mailbag. He'll even reprint the negative ones if it's well written, if you catch my drift. You go to lefsetz.com, LEFSETZ.com. It's under lists, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty obvious how to sign up. It's free, and it comes at all hours of the day and night. Lastly, since you are in the music business and you perhaps a performer, you'll probably end up touring, won't you? Wouldn't it be nice to know everything there is to know about the touring business? Polestar is the place to go. Pollstar, been around for decades, and that's all they do is live music and live touring. They do everything about venues and promoters and agents and artists and crews and buses and everything there is to know on a global scale. Polestar is there. It's free. Actually, you can buy the magazine. It's like Billboard. You can buy the magazine, but there's also a free access. You just go online to polestar.com, and there are the interviews and the articles and some of the charts and most of the databases. I mentioned the databases for 2 reasons. One is you can get yourself placed in Polestar's database as a performer. First of all, you send an email to directories, plural, at polestar.com, and ask that you want to be included in their database of performers. And then they'll tell you what to fill out. At the same time, they have a separate database of shows. So if you have shows coming up, or you have a past history of shows you'd like to get into their database, first you need to know how. So you have to go to a blog, you have to go to the website, blog.polestar.com, and there will be a form to fill out, and there will be a one sheet to tell you how to go about doing that. But it would be very beneficial and a sign of professionalism if you're on and in the Polestar databases. Well, that pretty much sums up my 6 books and my suggestions for sites and blogs and websites to go to while we're sequestered. And once this is over, by the way, that's no reason to stop reading if you catch my drift. Thanks very much for your time. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.